Hello, everybody. My name is Brandon Easton. I am a screenwriter, comic book creator, former New York City public school teacher, working in and around the entertainment industry for pretty much the last 20 years. I'm coming to you today on Wednesday, February 25th, 2026, because this is the day that has been on the minds of a lot of specifically black comic book creators, both on the professional and indie levels. Today saw the release of the new history of DC Comics, the Dakota Incident, which is a reframing of the Milestone universe's connection to the mainstream DC Comics universe. This is I believe, a variant, very nice with Icon and Superman on it. Don't know how much detail you can see, but I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but it's pretty cool. But this book has been the subject of a lot of conversations, or really spurred a lot of conversations about the role of black indie comics, the role of black comic book readers, and whether or not the mainstream companies have a responsibility, or who really has the responsibility to make these books, to keep these books in front of people, to ultimately support these books. I have a lot to say on the subject because I've been lucky enough to work at Marvel and do some stuff at DC. I've done stuff at IDW and a few other companies. I've gotten to do Superman. I've gotten to do, Robotech, which was awesome because I grew up on this stuff. I'm a kid of the 80s. I got also an 80s kid. I got to do Mask and a bunch of other books. And I'm not showing you this because I want you to buy anything. I'm not even certain most of this stuff is still available. But I will make reference to a particular book that I did that means a lot to me. And this came out a few years back. And it's Mr. Miracle, The Source of Freedom. But this was the Shiloh Norman version, who was African American. And I got to do a 6-issue mini. And I'll get back to that later. And again, I'm not showing this to you because I want you to buy it. Again, I'm not even certain what's available anymore. Okay? With that said, the first thing I really want to say is that the American superhero comic book industry is not really made or catered toward African American or black readers. It's not to say that there's like a malicious intent, but in a lot of the same ways, you could say Soul Train, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. And if you didn't grow up watching it, I don't even know what to tell you. But if you grew up watching Soul Train, you know what I'm about to say has some sense to it. And Don Cornelius, when he was creating Soul Train, was not creating it for heavy metal headbangers in Los Angeles. It's not to say he hated them or had an issue with them. That wasn't the target audience. It wasn't metalheads. It was people who wanted to hear a very specific segment of black music being played and celebrated on television. In a lot of the same ways, the American superhero comic book industry is not and has not been created with black folk, with us in mind. And you see this play out over and over again. And I'm not saying this is because of a racist conspiracy or anything like that. I mean, there are bigots in the business. Let's not pretend there's some hardcore racists in the business. But also, conversely, there are also some self-hating black people in positions of power or of influence within the business. And they don't get called out, but they're out there and they've been out there and they continue to be out there. And there's nothing we can really do about that because these folks have existed for a very long time and they do a lot of damage and a lot of harm, but they're still out there. So we have to admit that it's not only white folks, some white folks in positions of power who are working against us, but we also have black people who have influence who are not always on our side, if you understand what I'm saying. And that's not an excuse either. What I want a lot of fans to know, who if you're watching and if you please, if you could continue listening to what I have to say, I really want you to understand this. Black writers in particular do not get a lot of second chances in the business. If your sales numbers are not like ridiculously high or at a certain threshold that might be higher than a white writer at your same level, you're not going to get a second chance. You're not going to get a bunch of different books to reboot, to chances to pitch, whatever the case may be. Even if you, like myself, have credits in movies and television, it still may not move the needle because the sales in comic book shops on a retail level are not there, right? We don't get the benefit of the doubt. And I'll say this, if it was not for the folks at IDW, there were a team of editors who kept giving me work over the years. If not for the teams at Lion Forge, back when they were specifically doing comics, who kept giving me work over the years, I would have never ever really made any kind of impact on my resume. Not necessarily in the industry, but on my resume, I have some pretty good credits. It was because people liked me and were kept giving me work, even though some stuff I sold did. I mean, some stuff I did sold pretty well. Some stuff I did not sell very well, and that's why you don't get hired again. So when you see people saying, "Please support our book," and we should never put all our hopes on one book, one title, one company. But when you see and hear people saying, "Come on, buy our stuff," if you go to a convention and you see like black indie creators and you keep walking by their booth, and yet you'll get online and complain that Marvel and DC are not doing anything for you, it doesn't really make a difference. You have to support the folk on the indie level, or else they don't get a chance. And even if they sell a lot of books on the indie level, sometimes without significant big credits in other media, they're not going to take a chance on you, you know? And I use that as a segue to the Mr. Miracle book that I was talking about before, The Source of Freedom. 6-issue mini, a lot of people who read it liked it. But the sales for this particular book that I did, a DC book with a black male lead talking about black issues in the context of, Jack Kirby's, creation, it did not sell well. It did not sell well at all. And I don't know if it was me. I don't know if it was just because the character had a certain level of unfamiliarity. But we, at least people who were close to me, people in my circles, we pushed the hell out of this book, and we could not get people to buy it, and we couldn't even get people to share posts or links about it. We couldn't even get people to talk about it. The ones who liked it, I had to remind them to say something about it online. This is what we have to deal with. You don't see this with a lot of creators. You know, um, like one of my favorite creators in the business is a woman named Gail Simone. Gail Simone has an army of white female readers, and that's okay. And this is not a negative, but she has an army of white female readers in particular who are putting her name out there. Who, when she drops a book, they're sharing it. They're letting people know. They're getting on Book Talk and TikTok and Comic Talk and Comicsgram, whatever you want to call it, and they're dropping the name of her book. They're dropping her name. They're letting folks know it's available, how to get it, why they love it, why they love her. I have very rarely, if ever, seen that same love, that same energy for black writers, male or female, in the American superhero comics industry. For the brothers and sisters out there who are struggling on the indie level, or not necessarily struggling, but are frustrated and confused, you just have to keep creating material, you know? And at some point, you're going to have to realize that there really is no bedrock, there really is no foundation within the black comic consumer fan base in North America. It pains me to say it. I am not happy saying it. I am not being critical of these people because you can buy whatever you want. You can ignore whatever you want. But I would say do not lean into the hypocrisy of complaining about what Marvel or DC or whoever isn't doing for you while you ignore all the high quality black material that is out there in the indie space and in the professional space, because there's really no difference. I mean, if you're doing books, you are a professional. Now, there are varying levels of quality, and what I find happen, which is disingenuous and ridiculous, is somebody will find one poorly done black indie comic and hold that up as the standard for all black indie comics when it is not, but they do this. I don't know why that psychology exists other than self-hatred. I wrote about, must be almost 15 years ago, maybe 14 years ago, I wrote an essay called Black Geek Stockholm Syndrome. You can find it if you Google those words. And basically, I called out black consumers of American comics, of American superhero comics, for not supporting our work, but whining and complaining about what Marvel and DC aren't doing for us. Marvel and DC are not beholden to us. They owe us nothing. Never have and never will. So to put your faith and hope in companies who already are suffering because their bottom line is shaky because people aren't buying American superhero comics. I mean, manga is killing it across the board for the last really 15 years, if not 2 decades. So let's be real about that. But if you got a company that's hemorrhaging readers every year for 2 decades and they want to sell books, they're going to go to names they know sell books. And if by chance you get a black writer in there and those books don't sell, all that's all they need to be like, see, well, we gave him a shot. And I've gotten plenty of shots. And some of the stuff I did, particularly Superman and Batman stuff I did at DC, didn't do bad. It wasn't burning up the sales charts, but we ended it a lot of times in the top 50, if not the top 25. So I can't complain about that. But it was because of Batman and Superman, not because of Brandon Easton. And I had to make my peace with that too. But when we have all these very talented people in the marketplace and we don't support them, repeatedly don't support them, it's not even once or twice. It's not like we even had like a breakout hit of 250,000 copies. We're not even getting that. 100,000 might be a pipe dream in some circumstances. A lot of times we're happy with 50 to 75,000 copies, which back in the day was grounds for immediate cancellation, is now cause for celebration. And that's how much the bar has been lowered, you know? So I say all this just to throw it out there that if we don't support the books, it all comes back to a very simple fact. You vote with your dollar. If we're leaking books online, if we're putting them on those free comic book sites, the digital ones you can download and steal, basically it's stealing, it's bootlegging. If we're doing all of that, and we're knowing we're doing this, and we don't support the book in stores, if we're reading them online for free, and then wondering why the sales suffer, we're wondering why we don't get hired, this is because you're stealing. Every time you bootleg or download or swipe those free, evil links, you're part of the problem. You can't blame the white man. You can't blame the system of black exclusion when you don't vote with your dollars. We cannot expect anything from anyone because that's not how it works. That's not how it ever worked. It's great that we do have some white allies in the business. We do have white allies who buy our work. I've had more love, literally, from my white readers than the overwhelming majority of the black readers or the black folks I see on all these forums and all these Facebook, social media, all these sites whining and complaining and bitching and going back and forth, and it's just stop it, folks. You're not supporting us. You're not spending the money. You know that. You're doing this. So I would just say cut the bullshit. Straight up. It's just straight up bullshit. If you're not going to support us, just shut up. Stop talking. You're not doing nothing. It's just noise. It's just performative, blackness, which is some of the worst nonsense in the world. I don't buy everything, but I try to support the folks I respect and the folks I know are doing quality. I try to support black projects on Kickstarter when they, looks like something I would like to read. I don't do everybody because I can't afford it, and not everything is going to sing to me. But I do my best because I know coming up through these ranks for the last 25 years of my life that if I don't support the book, if I don't put my money out there, I can't complain. It's like right now, with the current, political situation. I know who I voted for, and I didn't vote for the current regime in power. So I can sleep soundly because I voted for Kamala. Before that, I voted for Biden. Before that, I voted for Clinton. Before that, Obama. Before that, John Kerry. Before that, Al Gore. Before that, Bill Clinton. I know where my bread is buttered. I know what I wanted to do in the world. And the same token, I buy physical copies of things I want to support. I don't even do streaming. I buy if something's available on Blu-ray or DVD, I'm buying a Blu-ray or DVD. If something is available on vinyl, because I don't really buy CDs no more, I'm buying it. Why? Because our dollars are votes, and the votes are for legitimacy. And we illegitimize, if that's even a word, our own people repeatedly. We delegitimize ourselves because we don't vote with our dollars. So I try not to be angry with any of this anymore because it's not worth it. It's just not. Luckily, I've been able to find work in film, TV, and video games. Thank God. And the beautiful thing is, I haven't had to rely upon black people to have success in those mediums. And that's what really sucks. Because if we did have to rely upon only black people to support us in comics, none of us would be making any money. And that's real. So, to all the brothers and sisters out there working and creating and building, keep working, keep creating, keep building. Eventually, some of us will have properties that land with the mainstream, meaning a greater majority of white Americans. Also, Latinos may pick up on it, Asians may pick up on it, Middle Eastern, maybe Native folks will pick up on it. And with that, maybe black folk will come around when they see other people buying it and talking about it. But if we have to rely upon black comic book readers to have a black comic book career, you might as well quit right now because it's not going to happen. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. In any case, take care, folks, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts.